In this video, I'm going to share with you the difference between moving home and leaving home because they're two very different things. And if you watch the first video, you'll understand what I mean when I say this. And so if you haven't had a chance to watch the first video in this 4-part video series, make sure to go back and watch the first video because otherwise this video is not going to make nearly as much sense to you. So please go back to the first video. It'll be in the Fresh Life Starter Pack playlist at my channel's main page, and you can click on the first video and that'll take you there. It's a 4-part video series and each video builds on the next. So if you haven't seen the first one, check it out. So I'm going to explain the difference between moving home and leaving home by sharing a couple stories about a couple folks that I helped relocate to build new lives. And one of them used the process that I would call moving home, and the other one simply just left home. And they had two completely different results with the same action of moving out of their parents' house and leaving. So it's not just about the action, it's definitely matters what kind of steps you take and what kind of intentions you have behind this. And those kind of intentions and steps I'm going to share with you through the rest of this video series. But first I'd like to share these stories with you just so you can kind of grasp why it's so important. And so I had a friend. His name was, for the sake of this story, let's call him Bill. Bill was kind of a wreck. He was in this downward spiral and not really doing much with his life. He still lived at his parents' house and couldn't keep a job and just didn't know how to improve himself, didn't know how to move forward in life. And he didn't want to be stuck in this state. He knew he was unhappy. He knew he wasn't doing good things for himself. And he knew he wasn't treating others right because he wasn't treating himself right. And because he wasn't putting in the effort to grow himself, he couldn't put in the effort to help others and really fulfill a meaningful life. And so I used my knowledge and my experience of moving home and being able to relocate from place to place all over the country. And I helped him leave his parents' house and relocate. And he did it. He did it. He followed through with a plan that I laid out with him up to the moving point, and then he executed. And he packed up what he could, he packed up what he needed to, and he left. And he made it all the way to the other side of the country. He did great. I was so proud of him. But then once he got there, he didn't want to put in the rest of the effort of moving home. He didn't bring with him that intention and that confidence to move home within himself. And I tried to help him build that, and he didn't want to listen to me or the steps that I laid out for him. And ultimately, he ended up just being in a different place, going back to the same old habits that he moved away from. And his life started to go back into a downward spiral where he was just becoming yet again a sad, stagnant person who's just living in a new place. And the reason for that is because he wasn't following through with the steps that I described in the first video of revising and analyzing and visualizing and finding those bottlenecks and identifying variables. He wasn't going through any of that process, even though I tried to guide him through those, along with other steps that I have that I've helped others implement through their moves and their relocation phases to help gain a new community, yet still be at home and at peace within themselves. He couldn't do it. And he ultimately failed and had to move back in with his parents' house, and he's still there to this day, about 3 years later. And unfortunately, I don't really talk with him anymore because I can't associate with people who don't want to put in an effort to grow themselves, at least be better people in general. And when you've just given up hope and you feel stagnant, that is the most important time to really make that move. And that's what my other friend did, who had great success. And so I'm going to tell you about his story. So here's the story about my friend Tim. Tim moved home. He did it the best way possible. And since he's made that move years ago, he's constantly grown and become a more humble person, become a more complete person. He's just such a different person now than he was years ago. And I've known this guy for a long time. And let me tell you, every time I see him, I can barely recognize him because he's always going through a growing process. And that's what happens when you move home. That's what happens when you leave somewhere and go with the intention of growing and pinpointing variables that change based on how you grow, that need to continue to change, and that can be dropped and added. And there's just so much to this growth process. And so I love telling his story because I helped him move out of his parents' house. He was about 25 years old, maybe 24, and he just was at his parents' house, kind of living a stagnant life, going out with friends, drinking, not doing much, being, dumb on the weekends and working the weekdays, and just like living a life that wasn't fulfilling for him. And he was ready to make that change. And I helped him reroute and put himself in a new place to grow and become a more humbling, better person. And he followed through with it. And he was able to implement the steps of moving home. And through that, he's just continued to grow. And since then, he's relocated multiple times. And every relocation has brought him new lessons. And at this point, he's really doing well. He's at a point where he's in a relationship with someone who he cares deeply for, and she cares deeply for him. And both of them have grown massively in my time of knowing both of them. And she also has relocated and done multiple things throughout her life. And so there's definitely a power between moving home and being able to identify lessons that you need to learn and using the course of action to move home and reroute and relocate to grow yourself. There's a lot to be said for that. And that's why so many people do it. Now, I've done this time and time again throughout my life, and I've created a system, a step-by-step process that's given me success and that's given others success. And unfortunately, hasn't brought success to others that wanted to do it but didn't implement the steps. And I want to share with you that process. And I'm going to share that in the next video, video 3 of this 4-part series. And I'm going to tell you exactly what each step is, how I've executed it, and how others have. And so I'm really happy that you're here to learn how to move through this process, move home, put yourself in a new place, and really reroute. Because just like my friend Tim, who did this process and had massive success, you will too. And if you don't follow through, just like my other friend Bill, who I rerouted and he did not follow this process, he failed. And he's just right back at square one without any motive to do it again, without any motivation to better himself. And that's not a place you want to be. And that's most certainly not a place I want to see you in. So please join me in the 3rd video because it's going to be killer when I share with you these steps that I've implemented and that others have implemented. But first, I wanted to give you a little footage of my friend Tim because I was able to catch up with him and ask him a few questions about his moving process so far. And I really want you to see what he's had to say about his experiences. So here it is.
Before I moved home, I was in more of a place of searching. Had worked a couple of jobs so that I was working a job, just for the sake of earning money. Had been wanting to get into a more lucrative field. It was the same town I was in, same people. There were some exciting things still, but I was definitely in a comfortable place, but didn't really have too much of an outlook or plans for the immediate future. The first step of moving home gave me a liberating feeling. I no longer felt like I was beholden to ways that I was expected to behave by family or friends.
Yeah.
And could kind of carve out my own, niche, find the things that I wanted to do, and spend time doing them. I think ultimately, the first move I made away from my hometown was actually more of a practice in being alone and being comfortable with just myself. And with that came a better understanding of my potential for learning and exploring hobbies or crafts. And I gained a lot of confidence as a result of that. I think the difference between before moving home and afterwards has been a slow process of understanding myself more, understanding what I like, what I want, certainly what I don't want. And there has been some back and forth. I moved back to my hometown for a bit and explored, well, maybe I'll give this another swing, see what it's like. Ultimately was more comfortable with some distance in between that and my hometown. That was my choice. I think there would have been success in St. Louis, but for me, moving and living in a different place has been a really important impetus for growth. It's been a large. It's kind of the event that precipitated a lot of growth in my life. A lot of that has been as a result of self-reflection. I have recently, in the last year, began seeing a therapist to kind of process and declutter a lot of past things in my life, which has been an excellent decision that I made. But it kind of came as a result of having that comfort and confidence in myself that, oh yeah, I can move away from home. I can therefore make any number of personal decisions to better my life. And it's not so scary of a thing after you've made one large decision. You realize that there's not much holding you back. It's never too late to change your routine. Never too late. If you're thinking of moving forward by moving home, Fresh Start 101 with James is a great place to start.
So now that we've had a chance to listen to Tim and his stories of how he's grown and the lessons he's taken out of his moving home experience, I'm going to share with you those steps in the next video with a little more insight of exactly how I have used them and what I have done for these to be so reliable and so systematic. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think and subscribe to this channel because we're going to continue putting out more and more content to help you grow and develop as a person and move home and build your own community and reroute and have a fresh start. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.